You're an Ecodesign Program Manager at Microsoft. What does your job look like? What do you do at Microsoft?
Hi, Celine. Yes, an Ecodesign Program Manager at Microsoft. Well, I've been with Microsoft for 3 years. Now, my job at Microsoft is to measure the carbon footprint of the laptops and the tablets that Microsoft makes. And I work with the engineers on the reduction of the carbon footprint of the laptop. So it's all about sustainability and reducing the environmental impacts of Microsoft on the environment.
Oh, great. I understand what carbon is, but if a 5-year-old was listening to the podcast, how could you explain to a kid what carbon is and what is important to reduce the carbon?
Great. And yeah, everything that we make as humans, the products that we make, the things that we do, they have an impact on the environment. And to make a laptop, you need to produce material. To produce this material, you need energy. And every time you use energy, either to produce electricity or you use energy to transport something in a car or in a truck, there are some emissions in the atmosphere that change the climate. And basically what it is, it's we measure how much emissions in the atmosphere happen, so we can estimate how much impact we have on climate. And then the game is to reduce these emissions, to try to find ways to use different type of electricity or use recycled material instead of material that come from mines, so that you need less energy to make this material. You can use less material, so recycle, reuse, reduce. That's basically what eco-design is.
Great. And do you work from home or at the office?
I work 100% from home. So I've been with Microsoft for 3 years and I went to the office once.
How is it possible to talk to your colleagues? It's really challenging, isn't it?
And believe it or not, despite the fact that we don't see each other, I'm part of a team. We feel and we work like a team. I feel exactly the same way as if I was seeing them every day in an office. Like it's using technology, seeing each other through the camera, but like working together on challenging projects for many years now makes that like we create connections remotely the same way as we were doing them in an office. And when we saw each other for the first time, I didn't feel it was the first time I was meeting them. Like it was very strange and very interesting. Yeah.
And you said 3 years ago, since 3 years. So does that mean that before COVID, you were in another company or...
Yeah, so I've been working on eco-design for 20 years. I moved to the US 14 years ago. So before Microsoft, I was working for another company also in the US for 10 years almost. And in the beginning, I was in an office in New Jersey, close to New York. And then I moved to Florida 8 years ago almost. And since I'm in Florida, so it's been 8 years that I work 100% remotely.
Great.
It's very common in the US. Like in France, it's not as much like it was hard like during COVID for companies to let people work from home. Here, the country is so big that it's much more common for people to work remotely, and there's much more flexibility when it's to work location.
In France, we discovered remote work in 2020 when COVID started. But are you saying that in the US it was really common before 2020?
So not for every, there are some jobs where, of course, you have to go to the office. But imagine you have a company based in New York and you want to sell your products in California, which is like 8,000 kilometers away, or like I don't know the distance exactly, but the country is so big, 50 states. It's it's like 6 hours flight go to California, 3 hours time difference. So usually companies would have sales teams that would be remote, fully remote. They don't need an office. They can work from home. So it was already like that before COVID, which is a companies to be present all around the country without having to have offices everywhere.
Okay, and yeah, it's really enjoyable to be able to work with American colleagues. Even, since last year, I've been working with Cecilia for Hello French, and the company is based in New York, and I'm in France, in Dijon, and we are able to work together. So it's really nice.
Yeah, like, and you know, beyond, like, of course there's the US, but like having international teams and between the US and Europe, and sometimes US and Asia, and like it's you just need to find the time where you can everybody's awake. Other than that, it's very it's very nice to work across different regions. I enjoy it.
Okay. And tell us about your colleagues. What kind of relationships do you have?
Yeah, so it's, you know, and that's also particular, I think, to Microsoft and the work that I do. Even though we are a team, we basically we work together without having to necessarily tell each other what we have to do, right? Even not being in the same office, we were still able to find things that some people are better to do. So depending on your strength and the things that you really want to work on, basically we speak every day almost together, and we found ways to work together without necessarily having anybody telling us what we have to do. So that's like there's a lot of autonomy in the way that we have goals and we know where to go together as a team. We know what we need to achieve, and then the way we achieve these goals, the company is letting us find a way, which is also very interesting and not the way that I've experienced management in France, right? Like in France, you usually, of course, there are some objectives, but you have people telling, okay, this is what you have to do to reach these objectives. With Microsoft, and I've experienced that also with other companies I worked with in the US, it's very much goal-oriented, where you say, okay, by the end of the year, the goal is to reduce by 20% the carbon footprint of the laptops. The company doesn't care how I make this happen.
Yeah.
They let me do it. And then we look in the end of the year, did you achieve objectives? Yes. Did you overachieve the objectives? Yeah, that's great. If you didn't, oh, why? And let's find ways to improve. But it's very much based on trusting employees to find the best way to achieve these goals, which is very nice. Like when you're autonomous and not having telling you every day what you have to do is some, like I would not be able to work differently today.
Yeah, what you're describing, it makes me think it's like Montessori pedagogy. I don't know if you're familiar with Montessori pedagogy, but we trust children, and we don't. Yeah, it looks like the same.
You know, I have two children, a son that is turning 8 today. Actually, it's his birthday, and a daughter that is still 8. She's going to be 9 in 2 months. They both go in a US school, and this is a Montessori school. So they've been in a Montessori school for like 3 years now. Yeah, and that's the mindset. The kids, they have some tasks that they have to achieve during the week. Like, so they know that they have to work on math, they have to work on history, they have to work on science. But they choose when and how fast they are going to be doing their tasks. And I don't know if it's for everybody. And we have some friends that their kids didn't do very well with this, but for our kids, it works very well. And it's absolutely fantastic to see them taking ownership on what they're going to be working on, and yeah, it's a very interesting pedagogy mindset that have worked very well. I wish I had that as a kid, honestly.
Yeah. So your children have the opportunity to live that right now as kids, but for you, you discovered the Montessori pedagogy at work when you were already an adult, when you moved abroad.
Yeah.
That's right?
That's true. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So in France, the experiences you had were really different from the experiences you have in the US?
They were different, and I was always very lucky to have managers that were great managers. I never had micromanagers that were looking at everything I was doing every day. So I always felt that my managers trusted me. And in the end, it's about trust, right? You want to feel trusted. But I do see this to an extreme today in my experience in the US, where it's to a point where I speak to my manager 30 minutes every 2 weeks. And I explain what I do, and I'm just transparent on the things I do and how I do. If I need help, I know I can reach out to her anytime. Available for me to help me anytime. But if I don't, like, she's just letting me do my job. And it is at the level that I've experienced in France. It was 15 years ago in France, so mindsets evolve, and I'm sure it's a little bit different. But I definitely had very different experiences when it comes to management in France.
Okay. If one day you have to come back to France, what will you miss the most?
The weather of Florida. Life in Florida is very nice. The weather is, like, especially the winter, and it's very nice. I enjoy in the US it's very easy for people to speak, like to meet, and people are very friendly. So yeah, I will not miss the food because I miss my French food, my French cheese. But it's very easy to do business in the US. Like, work relationship, everything is very much oriented towards work, and like, business relationships are much more casual, less formal. It's very, if you have an idea, or if you I'm going to give you an example. Like, I work for Microsoft full time, but I was missing my French bread and my croissant, right? So actually, I started before I worked with Microsoft, but I was complaining every day. And my wife, that is American, told me, stop complaining, do something about it. So I started learning on YouTube how to make bread. And then I wanted to learn more. So I followed the French training, the CAP boulangerie, remotely. And then I started making a lot of bread and croissant from my house. And my wife started bringing this to her yoga studio, and people started asking for it. So I created an online store where people would place orders. And on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, I deliver freshly baked bread, croissant to my neighbors. And then more ordering. And 2 years ago, almost, we opened a little bakery. So it was very easy to do. Even though I have a full-time job, we were able to work on this during the weekend, in the evening, find people that were interested to work in the bakery. And today, this is a bakery that has almost 10 employees and that make every day, like, croissant and bread. So you see, there is this mindset in the US where if you have a dream, if you want to do something, you just have to work for it, and you can make this happen.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, nobody's going to be judging you because, oh, you have a job, so no, you can't do something else. If you have things that you're passionate about, everybody is going to encourage you to make this happen, instead of telling you, oh, like, you can't do it. Yeah.
So it started as a side project, and it grew. The project was growing until creating a bakery.
It started by a passion of, like, baking from home and making my own bread in my little oven in my kitchen, to it's a small boulangerie that made almost 80,000 croissants last year. So it's pretty big now.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. Great. So you already told me a little bit, but what it looks like to be French, to live in the US, to be married to an American woman, and to have kids in Florida. What does your life look like?
Yeah, so the life is very much organized towards the schedule of the kids, where they go to school from Monday to Friday, and school in the US early. The dismissal is in the afternoon, so basically dropping off the kids, then we both work from home with my.
Oh, you're frozen. No. I will. I lost you.
Okay.
You were frozen. Okay,
I'm back.
Yeah, you're back. Can you repeat what you were saying?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, a typical week in the US for us is very much oriented towards the schedule of the kids, where the kids, they go to school at 8:30 in the morning, like around between 8 and 8:30, and they leave school at 3 in the afternoon. And usually after school, you have all the activities. So with my wife, we both work from home, so we are lucky that we can pick up the kids. One or the other picks up the kids. And then after school, usually they have activities which they do music, so they learn piano. On Tuesday they do gymnastics. On Wednesday they have a dance lesson. On Thursday they usually have another music lesson, or they practice football, American football. On Friday, they have a break where they don't have activities. And then the weekend, usually this is family time, enjoying outdoors in Florida. Like, we can be outdoors all year long, which is nice. And on Sunday, they usually have their American football practice, and they have games. So a lot of the American families and friends that we have around are very much organized around the activities of the kids. Very similar to, I guess, French families that have 8-10 years old kids.
Yeah.
I remember my mother taking us to horse riding, gymnastics, and yeah, it's very similar in this sense.
Okay. And let's go back a few years. Do you remember the challenges you had to face when you moved abroad 14 years ago?
Yeah, I jumped into a new job in the US. My first challenge was getting used to the accent. My English teachers in France were British, so they had a very British accent. Moving to the US, especially being on the phone with some customers, I had such a hard time understanding what people were saying. I felt speaking very fast. The accent made that I couldn't understand all the words. So it took me a few months to really get used to the accent. So that was the first challenge, was the accent. And understanding people without seeing their lips, without seeing them talking. The second challenge was all the nuances in the language. Every word is very important, and especially in your day-to-day life, with my wife, when you try to express emotions, every word is important. Every nuance in the word is important. And there are so many misunderstandings because, you're not using the right word. You wanted to say something, but you said something that means something different. So it's learn nuances took also some time. And then to me, the key was not to be afraid. I've never been afraid of trying, and 14 years later, she's still not perfect. It's much better. And I definitely can express my emotions much better. But I've never been afraid of trying and making mistakes. Never, never, never anybody made me feel like I should not speak or I should not try. Nobody made me feel bad because I didn't know the right word, or nobody made me feel that I was not welcome because of my accent or because of the mistakes I would make. So yeah, to me that's the key. Like, is that don't be afraid to speak. Don't like don't be afraid of your accent. It's cute. People like it. So yeah, just go for it. Make mistakes, and that's how you learn.
Yeah, really, really interesting. And when you said I wasn't able to see their lips, it reminds me I'm talking a lot about listening to podcasts. And when you listen to a podcast, you can't see the person who is talking. So you just have your ears. You just listen, and that's why it's really efficient to listen to a lot of podcasts.
Absolutely. And to learn, I think we don't realize how much we read on the lips until we learn a foreign language. I'm going to share like something that is very interesting to me. In France, I used to watch all these American movies in French. Today, it's impossible for me to watch an American movie in French because the voiceover.
It's the same for me.
I can see that the actor, like the lips don't match with the French words, and that it is very unpleasant experience now. Before I didn't even notice. So it's I feel this is how you realize that your your English is getting better, is that when you start enjoying watching movies in English, because you get very uncomfortable seeing the disconnect between the lips and the words.
Yeah, and I don't want to watch TVs in French anymore. So my family they make fun of me because they said to me, "You're French, so we can watch TV in French." No, just English. Yeah, okay.
But I do force my kids to watch cartoons in French though in the morning to try to help them, with their French, which is not easy. But yeah.
Do you speak to them? Do you speak in French with them?
No, something that that's one of the regrets I have today, is that when they were born, I was trying to speak to them in French, and I, with my wife, because she's American, and together we communicate in English. And I feel like as they were growing up, because with my wife we speak English and we don't speak French, naturally my brain is in English mode. And it's an effort for me to transition to French. So when they grew up, I mostly spoke to them in English, and I was exposing them to French by watching cartoons or by translating some words. So instead of making the effort to actually speak to them in French, I kind of just gave them some information in French, which makes that they are not completely bilingual today. They have some notions, they have some vocabulary, they do understand some of the things I can say in French, but they are definitely not bilingual. Yeah, that's my next mission. I want them to be bilingual.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be really weird for them if you switch to French right away. But it's never too late. They are still really young, 7 and 9. No, 8. You said 8 and
8. Yeah, they are 8 and 9 soon.
8 and 9. Okay, so they're still really young, and you can try to speak to them in French, but I think your wife, is it annoying for your wife that she's not able to understand when you speak French?
And actually, she understands French well. She can make sentences imperfect, but like she can express ideas and to express some ideas. She speaks Spanish because she's Latin, like she has Latin origins, right? So the Spanish helps a lot. But she's very good to understand what we would say in a French conversation. So I don't think it would be annoying or frustrating for her, because she would be able to understand what I say to the kids. And actually, I think it would help her too. So it's definitely worth trying. And the challenge is not too much on her or how she would feel about it. I think she would actually enjoy that. It's more my brain and switching my brain to French.
You're a French
Naturally, I
native
speak.
speaker.
Yeah, it's been so long now that English comes first when I open my mouth.
Yeah.
This being said, my sister lives with us right now, and naturally I will speak in French to my sister. I can't speak English to my sister. So it's very interesting how the brain connects a language to a person.
Yeah.
And you switch from one to the other based on who you're talking to. So I just have to change my brain connects my children to. I have to change this and make this automatic for me to speak to them in French, I think.
It could be a really great opportunity for them.
Yeah, no, it's a gift. Like I want to offer them gift for sure. It will make their experience to learn English much more pleasant than my experience. It was very hard for me to learn English. I was not a good student in France when it comes to English. I had bad grades. And I would need English in my life. Like, I wanted to be a firefighter. Like, I don't need to speak English if I'm a firefighter in France, right? But who would, like, I would never have imagined that I would end up living US, being married to my wife that is American and speaking more English than French today. So, yeah, people listening, you should definitely not think that you're never going to need it. You never know. You might need it very much.
I 100% agree. And so when you moved abroad in 2011, you weren't able to speak English fluently. You had to make a lot of effort.
My level of proficiency in English, I would communicate well. I was already using English in France because in my job, I was working with a lot of people in Germany, in Italy, in Spain, in the UK. So so I could speak English with other European nations, but when they speak English, being German, they speak slowly and so we had the same level, right? So it was much more comfortable. So I would say that I was almost bilingual. I was missing a lot of vocabulary. And I had a lot of room for improvements, but I was already able to have a conversation in any type of situation, even in my job. So not fully bilingual, but I was already not too bad. Was making a lot of mistakes, for sure.
Yeah. And right now, do you consider yourself bilingual? Sorry.
Yeah. Today, yes. Like I don't need to think. Like I can say anything on any topics without having to think about what I'm going to say. So it's really, I do feel bilingual.
And do you dream in English?
I think so. I have, and sometimes I wake up and I try to, I don't really know.
Yeah.
But I think so. I think I do dream in English. But when I wake up, I'm not, did I try in English? Like, was this conversation in French or in English? I think today it's kind of, it doesn't matter to me anymore. So maybe sometimes it's in French or in English. I do think it's in English.
Okay, sorry. Sorry for that. If you could go back in time, what advice would you give yourself before settling here in the US?
I would take time to read about the culture. We come to the US with our French and European culture mindset. The US is a country that is very different culturally. It was built differently. There are different cultures depending on where you go in the US. If you're in New York, it's very different from where if you're in Texas or in California. So trying to understand how the country was built, why do all have guns in the US, like trying to understand why, so you don't come necessarily with judgment, but you come with already an understanding of why it's different. And that would help preventing a lot of frustrations. If you come to the US with the expectation that education, healthcare, the food is going to be like home, I'm frustrated every day. It's not the case. It's different and you're not going to change it. So to accept it the way it is, you're not going to change the way it is. So yeah, it's just coming with an open mind and already an acceptance that the culture is different, so that you can enjoy your experience and you don't develop too many frustrations. You're going to be frustrated for many things, but you have to manage this.
Great. Anything else you want to share before my last question?
Yeah, just when it comes to English and learning English, and like don't be afraid to speak and to try. Nobody's gonna judge you for your accent, and again, that's how people expressed it to me. They think our French accent is actually sexy. It's cute. So like don't be ashamed of your accent, and don't be afraid of making mistakes. We learn from mistakes. People that are going to be talking to you in English, usually they are not to speak French the way you speak English. So don't be ashamed. And then enjoy the experience of learning about other cultures. I see English as the door towards other cultures, not only here in the US, but if you want to go in Vietnam or even in China or in Japan, language are you going to use to speak with these people? You're going to use English. So English is your door towards other cultures where we can learn other cultures using a common language that we can share.
Great. And do you have a book you would like to recommend for future expats or French people who are going to work with American people?
I honestly don't have necessarily books. All the books that I can recommend are related to sustainability. So unless you are very interested in sustainability, I would not have necessarily an idea of a book that can help with
Maybe
English.
a podcast, YouTube videos, some content.
They are all my things are related to sustainability. I mean, it's going to be hard for me to recommend something.
Okay, no worries. You shared a lot today. You shared your experience, and it was really nice.
Thank you, Celine. Thank you for making this happen.
Thanks, Xavier.